All right. So our topic today is the pure love within. And this assumes, which I feel 100% is a fact, that every human soul has this capacity, this innate capacity, intrinsic capacity for pure love. And we might say, I'm not sure if I'm always feeling that, and I'm not sure if everyone else is, but sometimes it can get very, very covered up, deactivated, lose access to that capacity, just as we lose access to our capacity for peace or any of these other wonderful qualities that actually are innate to the human soul. So when we're looking at the pure love within and we speak of this word love, we always connect it to the heart. So first we might want to just get a sense of what is this thing called pure love? Why not just say the love within? Why are we saying pure love? And I will mention before you start sharing your wonderful ideas, what inspired this topic today. Some of you might know on the Hindu calendar is a day called Raksha Bandhan, or Rakhi for short. And Raksha Bandhan means a bond of protection. For those who take yoga, hatha yoga classes, you might have heard the word bandhan, meaning bond or bondage. So a bond of protection, this idea of protecting the purity of the soul. And it's become something else in day-to-day Hindu culture where a sister ties this sacred thread on her brother's wrist. If she doesn't have a brother, it could be a cousin, a male cousin, or a male friend. She ties this sacred thread on their wrist, which is indicating his promise to protect her dignity. And in return, he gives her gifts. So it's this very sweet sort of connection all around the honor, protecting the honor of the soul. And it's like many things become just a fun thing to do and not really reflecting on what is behind this festival, the origin, what is it signifying. But it's this idea of what is that pure state? When we say pure love, what does that mean? And how do we protect it? What is required to protect it? So that's what inspired the workshop today, was the festival of Raksha Bandhan. And what is this thing called pure love? You know, it's sort of made of two words, pure and love, but just reflecting on what is pure love? How might it differ from love? And what does it have to do with the self? What is the relevance to the self, this idea of pure love? So just reflecting on that idea, seeing for yourself what thoughts come when you think to the self, pure love, what does that feel like? Or what does that signify? You can reflect for a moment if you want to unmute to share or tap anything in the chat box. So we have pure love is unconditional, no expectations. Fantastic. No conditions. You all are experts on pure love. No conditions. Any other thoughts on pure love?
Absolute.
Absolute. Beautiful. Anything else that comes to you when you hear this phrase, pure love? Joyful. Wonderful. So it's a positive thing. It's not a horrible thing. So joyful. Mm-hmm.
So loving.
Loving, so loving. Non-judgmental. Fantastic. So hopefully you're all sharing beautiful things, and it's giving you a sense of this idea of pure love. And so we have the word love. I love chocolate. But pure love, when you put pure in front, it seems to be into a class of its own. So this word pure is quite powerful. And for all the reasons that you shared, I think if we said conditional love, it may not have the same attraction as unconditional, non-judgmental, absolute, unlimited, light, joyful love. It sounds beautiful. And I remember when I first came to the Brahma Kumaris, and one of the sort of aspects that was explored was the 7 eternal qualities of the soul. And those 7 eternal qualities of the soul are peace, purity, power, truth, bliss, harmony, and love. So these are eternal qualities. They're always there. And to give you an experience of what always means, because, we say, well, if it's always there, how come the planet is the way it is? How come we can be so unkind, unloving, untruthful, this way to each other? What happens? And of course, when we start to go through changes in our state of being, we disconnect from those capacities. We are not able to use those capacities. Just as when, the body has certain capacities, but if I suffer an injury, the leg has the capacity to walk. If I suffer an injury, that capacity is not available to me. If I break the leg, that capacity will not be available to me until the leg heals. And then it walks again. So it's suggesting that there are some injuries to the spirit, to the self, such that those capacities do not become available. And if I can heal, spiritually heal, those capacities will be available again. So we have this global phenomena of everyone being injured. So we've disconnected with these eternal capacities. But when I heard about them and the one love, it was explained to me, we theoretically should not have to put pure in front. It should be assumed that this is an unconditional love. But this idea of love, pure love, what it meant was that one would have equal benevolent feelings, good wishes, equally for every soul on the planet. This is love. Anything else would be conditional. The idea that I love them because they're related to me, or I love them because they act the way I want them to act, or I love them because they're loving. We put lots of conditions on this idea of love. I love milk chocolate, but I'm not a fan of dark chocolate. I know that's shocking. So I've got conditions on chocolate. I'm choosing a safe topic. So this is not conditional love of, this is not unconditional love of chocolate. Thankfully, otherwise I would probably be massive physically, but it's conditional love. So we do this around each other. We have conditional love. That if someone acts a certain way, plays a certain role, we no longer have this love. So this means that we're all a little injured. It's not the pure or unconditional love. And that really touched me when I heard about this true form of love, and that it's intrinsic to each of us, this unconditional or equal love for every single human soul. And actually, even as we watch different situations unfold, we have those pure feelings continue. So it's a really high state, as all of those eternal qualities are, but speaks to a very healthy state. So taking a moment to just explore this word pure a little bit more deeply, because this is what we're connecting that love to. Absolutely, it's unconditional, non-judgmental, no expectations, absolute, constant, and therefore very joyful, very, very positive. But what does this pure mean? Very often, for some, pure has even been connected to unloving. They hear pure and they think, they feel judgment, or they don't want to talk about it. We like to talk about it under certain conditions. So if I said, I'm going to serve you some pure sparkling water, you would be fine with that. You'd be very excited. But if we're, or we talk about the purity of an infant, or the purity of food, pure vanilla extract, we like all these things. Pure intentions, we're okay with. But when we come down to the purity of the self, the purity of the heart, we start to get a little twitchy and might even feel judged and really don't want to explore that. I think in each of our hearts, there is a deep love for purity. We really have an attraction to purity, which is what Raki is all about. But on our journey through different experiences, perhaps we've gotten a little disoriented, disconnected from our love of that word. Pure has 3 meanings or experiences connected to it. The first one, which is what the pure orange juice, pure water, pure vanilla extract is about, is nothing foreign mixed in. So it means that if I'm getting 100% pure orange juice, I don't even need to look at the label, theoretically. But if I did, it would just say oranges. So there is nothing foreign mixed in there, nothing else mixed in there. It's just oranges. So this is the, I suppose, very ultimate definition of pure. Another one connected to that, which I think is the one that might cause us a little distress, is that there are no desires, which is a state of complete contentment. Very content. Not to be confused with uncaring or apathetic or doormat or any of these things, but simply free from desires, very full and content. So expectations comes from desires. I want things to go a certain way. I expect you to act a certain way for me to have good feelings towards you. So this is all based on what I want, which means I am discontent. So this state of full contentment, whatever is going on, it's not going to disturb me. So I can actually show up in a benevolent way. And oddly enough, content souls are far more effective at being able to be, providing correction or support or empowerment than discontent souls. Very often we get a bit righteous and say, I'm telling you this because I've had people say this to me, perhaps you have it. I'm telling you this because I love you. You should not do that. I'm telling you this because I love you and I can see how it's damaging you. You should not do that. And they could be absolutely right. But if the vibe, if there's any speck of desire in that expression, the soul will pick it up and will push back because it's not really love. If I was to say, and we'll come to this in a moment, if I'm really saying it from love, I will say it. And it's fine whatever you choose to do after that. There's not that I need you to do what I'm asking I'm asking you to do, or I will not be happy. So if there's any subtle trace that my happiness depends on you changing, and I'm calling it love, the soul will pick up on that and actually will backfire. So it's very, very powerful, even in a subtle form, that discontentment. So to be very, very full, free of desires, this is a sign of pure. That's where the no expectations comes from. And the final one, which is very beautiful, whenever we say pure around a product, so vanilla extract, there might be artificial vanilla extract and pure vanilla extract. And you'll probably notice, I know I always am in this quandary. I see the two, and the price for pure vanilla extract is like double the price for artificial. And I'm like, I'm so tempted to get the artificial. It's probably tasting the same. We know it's not, but because the pure is so much higher price, because pure means valuable. A deep, deep connection to value. So when we're talking about, and this is where purity makes us twitch, because purity is talking about the value of the self. You know, and there's so many books and articles and courses on how to increase self-worth. And it's actually return to purity that's going to increase my self-worth. What it's saying, it's actually a very beautiful thing that suggests, is that our intrinsic, authentic, true state is just values, just qualities, those 7 eternal qualities, and all of their children. They have many, many hundreds of different virtues that are the result of those 7 core qualities. That's our true state. Our eternal state is very value able, just expressing those values. But again, when we suffer spiritual injury, we lose the capacity to express those values, and we start to feel our sense of self-worth sort of starting to go down. I had an amazing conversation with a young person. They must be about 21, 22 yesterday. And they were working, they still do, working at a very popular clothing store. They are the, how do you say, the display. They're artists, and they do all these beautiful 3D displays, etc. in the store. So at one point, the manager was someone who really was struggling with people dynamics, and the staff was really having, it seemed, difficulty with this manager, to the point that many were leaving. Like, they just all were leaving. And my coworker, the young person I'm talking to, was sharing. She stayed. She was very determined to stay, and very determined to be as supportive as she could. She was very aware of the challenges, but she didn't want to respond or react in a negative way. She really wanted to maintain her integrity, those values. And she says, yeah, if I sort of started to have reactive thoughts or negative thoughts or critical thoughts, I felt icky. Now, many would rationalize why they're having these thoughts. Well, look, she's doing this, everyone's leaving, it's clear. But she kept saying, no, all I felt was icky. I felt like I was not operating at my highest potential, my true self, and it really affected my heart. I thought that was very powerful and insightful. So this idea that there's so much value connected to operating in our pure way, those core qualities, which includes that love, those benevolent feelings equally for every being. This is a sign of a healthy heart. So when we talk spiritually, this term heart or love, that place from which that love comes, the heart, has a slightly different meaning. very often we have these words, emotional. I felt it so deeply in my heart. It was just like so emotional or romantic, or these very deep feelings. And it can become a very sensitive topic. But just for the sake of conversation and not to get into semantics, this idea of, I'm going to throw out two words and I'm going to give you a moment to reflect on them and see if for you there's any sense of any difference. And it's what's behind the words, because again, I don't want to get into semantics. You might use two different words, but what difference are we trying to draw attention to? So the two words, one is emotions and the other is feelings. Emotions and feelings. Take a moment to see if you can get underneath the words to the vibe of those words, and if there's any difference between the two, or if you think there's two different ways we can operate. They both might be attributed to the heart, these two different ways that we might operate, emotions or feelings. Is there any difference? Different ways that our heart can operate? And again, if you want to share in the chat or unmute, feel free to do. And it's okay if not, but just reflecting. I think the emotion is the action that comes out as a result of the feeling. Thank you, Sheila. And it's tough because I know that we all have different experiences with these words. And so what are you trying to get at, Judy? So this could go horribly sideways. Not your fault, just I know we have different experiences with these words. Bonnie, go ahead.
Well, emotion I find is sometimes reaction, whereas feelings I have more gut actions. It's more an action to me that I would take, whereas sometimes my emotions are reaction to something.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bonnie. Any other thoughts? Because we tend to suggest they're both coming from the same thing, the heart. So any other thoughts about what are these two things, two possible things that can come out of our heart? It is true, and very similar to what Bonnie was suggesting, that we use the words, or we could use the words, a reaction versus a response. So reaction is this idea that I've got these buttons inside that have developed through different experiences. And something happens and it triggers, it just sets off that button, and I react quite strongly, and feel like, oh yeah, no, this is real. It's coming from my heart. I'm feeling this, it's a deep, deep thing. So this idea of a reaction, emotions, this might be a reaction versus, so that's from the outside in. There is some stimuli connected to some past experience I had, but some stimuli that triggers this reflex from within, very strong emotional we have more. Emotions tend to refer to that which isn't tangible, while feelings are I have to click on this. Feelings are something that we can kind of put your finger on. Wow, okay, thank you. I find it all rather nebulous myself, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're dealing with such intangible things overall. But this idea that, emotions can be a reaction, something happens outside and it hits a button, very deep trigger, very deep reflex. Responses or feelings, these things from the inside out. So again, based on the core qualities of the soul, independent. So inside out means whatever stimuli is in front of me, I'm expressing these feelings. So these again are coming from the eternal qualities of the soul. Sometimes when it comes to an organization like the Brahma Kumaris, spirituality in general has gotten this rap quite a bit, that it's not about relationships and I shouldn't feel anything. You're always talking about detachment. And it's actually all about feelings. What is going on is I'm trying to get myself into a state where I can express the feelings. Peace is a feeling. Bliss is a feeling. Love is a feeling. I want to express these feelings, ideally as my response of choice to what's going on. So this idea of being kind of affected from the outside and these reactions, these deep emotions being triggered, when we say I want to kind of be liberated from that reactivity, that emotionality, it doesn't mean I'm going into a non-feeling state. I'm trying to move towards these very pure feelings. Again, feelings being connected to a healthy heart and emotions being connected to a heart that's gone through some things. So not so healthy heart. And it's not about repressing emotions. So this brings us to, how do we heal the heart so that we're not pushing anything down, but if I continue to react, I am re-injuring the heart over and over. Pure love will not be possible. When I have very strong emotions, they usually tend to also be conditional because they're dependent on a particular stimuli. So I can have a deep, very strong emotion of love. It is triggered by some stimuli outside. So now I'm back to conditional love. It feels like it's like deep love. It really feels like this is love, but it's so dependent on particular stimuli. So it's setting me up for that conditional love again. And because it's so dependent on that external stimuli, if that external stimuli is removed or changes, I'm going to be in a whirlwind of very strong emotions because it's so dependent. It's actually injuring the heart, so dependent on external stimuli. I can have deep emotions of love for a particular person or situation that literally if you feel, I will die if that person goes away or if the situation changes, and I will kill anyone who threatens that person or threatens that situation. I will become very unloving because I've met, and you may have too, or you might even experience in yourself, souls that, seem quite loving. And if you ever cross their path, it's like they turn into something completely different. I remember once being very young and I was in Stratford, Ontario, and I love to wake up early in the morning. Stratford is an evening kind of town because they have all the plays, so everyone sleeps till noon and then they stay up late to watch the plays. But I'm an early riser, so I would wake up early and have the town to myself. And I'd have a bike and I'd bike along the Stratford River, the Avon River. It was very beautiful and I'd be completely alone. And I remember I was biking one day and there was, they have the swans on the river. And the swans, we have lots of emotions when we see swans. It's like they're so beautiful. It's so romantic. It's so, it's your classic image of something so graceful and royal and serene. So I got off the bike and I just was, I was just so, there was such an emotion, if you will. So I got off the bike to get closer to the swans, and they're looking very graceful and beautiful until I got too close. That was terrifying. And the fact that I was alone made it more terrifying, because an angry swan is absolutely frightening. That beautiful curved neck, I want you to imagine it straightening out completely and starting to yap away as if it's going to attack you. Terrifying. So, we have this emotion of love. It feels like it's coming from the heart, but it's actually a reaction to something on the outside that's actually connected to these buttons inside, this past conditioning. So we have very strong emotional reactions to things and think it's love. But again, pure love, true love, is an eternal quality of the soul, independent of what is going on. It's just, if I'm in a healthy state, basically we're saying I'm always loving, which means I'm always useful, because that beautiful energy of love is so healing, is so empowering, is so forgiving, is so accepting. It's useful in any scenario. Any scenario. So imagine constantly outputting that kind of vibration from a healthy heart, a truly loving being. The word absolute was used at one point. This feeling of love, very pure feelings of love. They're not reactions. It's coming from a healthy heart. So how do I heal the heart? How is that going to be possible? We may have to have another whole session on that. But spirituality really is dedicated to this endeavor of healing the heart. It's very interesting. There is a being that in the West we call God. And that being, across all cultures, cross-temporally, has been given what's said to be 1,008 different names. Every name is attributive, which means somehow we remember that being performing that action. So one of them is, remover of sorrow, bestower of happiness, or Allah, the merciful one. So lots of the purifier. There's so many different names in different cultures and times. And one of the names for that being that we have cried out to that one for is Eternal Surgeon. The eternal surgeon. Because that being is purely spiritual, does not come into this sort of depths of physicality that we do, stays purely spiritual. They have the qualifications, if you will, to be an eternal surgeon for the heart, the real heart, not the physical heart, my heart, the heart of the soul. They have these qualifications because it's a spiritual endeavor to heal the heart. I can do different things to try and heal the physical heart. I can work out, I can eat low cholesterol, I can do all sorts of interesting things, but still there can be an emotional storm going on inside, hypersensitivity going on inside, moments where, quite frankly, I feel I become as ugly as that swan. I'm very critical, judgmental thoughts of myself or others that are so damaging to our own heart. So how do I heal that heart, that inner heart? So it's back to being a transmitter of pure love, benevolent feelings, merciful feelings, compassionate feelings, loving feelings, understanding feelings? How can I get, regardless of what's going on, how can I get to that state again? It's going to be a spiritual endeavor. And it's said that, just as physical surgeons have different equipment they use to operate on the physical heart, they always have these different instruments, and the scalpel seems to be a big one. The eternal surgeon also has instruments, two main instruments that surgeon uses. I know we often say time heals all wounds, and people ask about this. Is time one of? I think that timing is important, but it's how I use the time that will determine whether or not healing happens. So what are these instruments that we are inspired to use, using our time in a worthwhile way? What are these instruments that the eternal surgeon uses? And they're really two instruments that we call knowledge and yoga. These two instruments will heal the heart of the soul of the self, such that that capacity for pure love from within becomes possible again. This month, August, is the month that we remember one of the administrative heads of the organization who was known as Dadiji. It's a term of endearment, or Dadi Prakashmani, which means jewel of light. And Dadiji, who I did get to know, she passed away in 2007 on August 25th, so 14 years ago. Dadiji was fascinating. Under her spiritual leadership, the organization just exploded. It just internationally exploded. And I think she was getting a lot of, power from God to make that happen. But one thing she was known for was to be super loving. One of the most famous gestures that she was known for was this one. She'd be in a crowd and it looks like she's hugging herself, but what she was actually doing is saying, pretend that I'm giving you this. Pretend that I'm giving. She would just do this all the time. She was super, super loving. Like, people could insult her. Nothing stopped that pure love from flowing from that soul. Really remarkable. Didn't really speak English, but you had souls coming from different languages, different cultures, different walks of life, and they all had the same experience of this deep love. Now, I remember one day we were going to come in front of the different daddies, the elder teachers, this beautiful tradition when you're in the spiritual headquarters where you receive gifts. So there's sort of a line of them and they're each giving you a different gift. And Dadi Prakashmani was in this line as the spiritual head. And I remember as I'm coming to my turn to be in front, I remember having in my head, this little chit chat, I suppose, with myself and also with God, if you will, saying, I really want to know what the truth looks like. I really want to feel the truth about the soul, about the self. I want to know what spirituality really, really feels like. So I'm having this very genuine inner conversation. And Dadiji was like so animated, so engaging, so loving, so wonderful. And I remember coming in front of her and externally still all that genuine engagement and love. But I had to rub my eyes because what I was experiencing very deeply was this deep, pin drop silence at her core. Deep, a point of silence, this eternal, free being, this point of silence. It was such a contrast to the external, what was being, it was all very genuine, her expression, but what I was seeing was the seed, the source of that love. It was very surprising, because we usually kind of just think, okay, you just act enemy, but the source of all of that love and acceptance and beautiful feelings was this deep, deep silence. And I cannot forget it to this day. It was absolutely remarkable. And I remember I passed by and, the eyes meet and I get this experience and it was so mind-blowing. I'm continuing down the line, but I had to look back because it was just, wow, what just happened there? And the moment I looked back, it's as if she could feel it and she turned her head to look at me and said, would you like another look? In complete silence, all this going on. The secret behind a healthy heart, the source of pure love, she revealed it to me in that deep point of silence. So these two pieces of equipment that the eternal surgeon uses, that Dadiji was really experiencing, knowledge and yoga. And we talk about this so much in the Raj Yoga course. So always, if of interest, to go into it more deeply, to explore that option. But when we say knowledge, spiritual knowledge, in essence, we really don't know ourselves. In essence, what we tend to know is a sliver of ourselves. We might say in this life, or according to our physical attributes, or we have a very temporal sense of ourself. When I say, well, I'm Judy, I'm the body, I mean, this body's temporary. Like, that's kind of weird. Or I say, well, I'm the mother of so-and-so. Well, that's temporary, because there was a point when you weren't the mother of so-and-so. Did you cease to exist? Or I'm the one who works at this place. Well, there was a time when you didn't work at that place. Did that mean you ceased to exist? So we have a very flimsy sense of ourselves. So spiritual knowledge is giving us a very deep, timeless experience of ourselves. We call that spiritual. It's not based on anything physical or temporal. Spiritual knowledge of the self. We call this a university, and the subject matter is the self. This alone is a deep expression of love. One of the forms of love, we say that soul's so loving, they're so understanding. So understanding is a form of love. And the more I can understand myself, spend time understanding myself in a timeless way, this is a form of self-love, which is a very pure love, trying to understand myself in a timeless way. And the more I understand myself in a very deep way, the more I will be able to understand others. That understanding towards others, that form of love, which is understanding towards others. It's unconditional because we're all extremely similar under the skin. The details might vary, but the concepts are the same. Everybody's seeking peace and happiness. Yeah, the details are different how we're trying to do it, but everybody is seeking peace and happiness. We're so similar under the skin. So if I can get under my own skin and understand the depth of the self as a soul, as a timeless being, I'm going to be far more understanding of others. I will know why they reacted that way. I'll know how ego works. I know how fear works. I will be so understanding of others. This pure love starting to come back, starting to heal the heart. So spiritual knowledge is a deep form of love from God. It's a form of love to the self if I study it, and it becomes a form of pure love to others as I apply it. So this is one tool the surgeon uses, spiritual knowledge. We sometimes even use the term sword of knowledge because it can really cut through illusions and deception, self-deception. So it's the scalpel, if you will, this very interesting form of love called understanding, spiritual wisdom, very healing. Understanding is always so healing. It is even the backbone of forgiveness. The moment I understand the full story, these feelings of forgiveness emerge, and this is so powerful just for the self. Forget about trying to forgive anybody else. To be forgiving of the self is huge, and it's really only possible if I have that understanding. So this is one tool. The other one is yoga. We use this term, the fire of yoga, but it's not like hot and painful. It's been memorialized that way. It's actually very cool and soothing and nurturing. The reason we say fire is because when there's foreign impurities in something like a metal, gold, one puts it in the fire to remove the impurities. So this very soothing, nurturing experience helps to melt the effects of time, the impurities that might have collected within the self, the fear, the uncertainty, the lack of self-confidence. All these impurities start to melt through yoga. And yoga simply means a deep, meaningful, accurate link with the Supreme Soul. So this beautiful, silent communion with the one who is ever healthy. We're deeply colored by what we have yoga with. Yoga means to remember. Remember means to belong to. It's a very deep heart-to-heart connection, to belong to. All of us are yogis. We all are having deep connections with something or someone. You know, some of us are yogis of the past. We keep living, belonging to the past, and it will shape and color how we operate. Some of us are yogis with food. Many of us, most of us are yogis with people. We remember people. And again, these are all shaping how we operate. This is how powerful yoga is. I remember once taking I don't even know what to call it. I don't know if mind body's the word, but it was I suppose a healing discipline. It's called mitzvah. And you basically lie on the practitioner's table. It looks like a massage table. You lie supine on your back on the table. And they stand at the end of the table. And the idea is physically to realign the body if it's out of alignment. It's a very subtle practice. And so what happens is the practitioner has to be in proper alignment themselves. So I'm lying on the table and the practitioner is at the foot of the table and they are in proper alignment. And all they did was hold my big toes. So they wrap their fingers around my big toes. That's it. And I'm sitting there saying, at first I was like, okay, this is super weird. I'll just wait till it's over. I'll be polite and then I'll get out of here. But while I'm sitting here having these doubting thoughts, meanwhile, I'm actually starting to feel something. I'm starting to feel very, very subtle adjustments going on in the spine. Very, very subtle. We've got someone who is in proper alignment. We've got a connection, and the body is being colored by that connection. It is aligned. It's actually starting to match their alignment and melt away the misalignment. This is really how yoga with the Supreme Soul works. We're trying to connect to a being who hasn't come into physicality, so they remain in that healthy state. You know, and so many near-death experiences describe this source of incredible pure love, this deep experience of love. This is a being who is constantly, such a healthy heart, radiating pure love. Now, many of us might dispute this, but what has happened, this is how loving this being is. what's happened is we've come up with our own ideas about God. Most, if not all, are projections of ourselves. So we'll say God is judgmental, God is frightening. If we look at it, these are actually describing a bit what we have become. We are projecting. And that being doesn't feel insulted, doesn't try to defend themselves. It's just, they just keep loving. We're not picking up on it at all because we're busy trying to connect in an inaccurate way. We're busy trying to connect to a judgmental, distant, omnipresent, not sure what being. And so it's like trying to plug something in an outlet and I'm nowhere near the holes and expecting some kind of return. It becomes a one-way transmission. Lots of crying out to God, but not a lot of sense of receiving. So an accurate connection soul to soul and starting to experience, starting to get realigned, starting to heal the heart through that very quiet, subtle connection, starting to get realigned, coming back to our innate capacity as pure, loving beings. So I think I'm going to end there and go into experience at this point, but I do want to ask if there's any questions or thoughts you want to share before we go into the experience. Are we okay? It's quiet out there. Maybe you're already in the experience. All right. Let's see what happens going into the surgery room to heal the heart. As I sit here now, I gently start to narrow my sense of focus. Usually my attention is outside of the self, pulled outwards through the physical senses, the eyes or the ears, or my attention is caught up in time, the pressures of time, thinking about the past, the future, what I need to do, or my attention is being controlled by different repetitive themes around uncertainty or insecurity or fear or wanting or needing, seeking. But at this moment, I'm going to step outside of all those usual places my attention goes and come deep inside to a very quiet place I have inside. It's like my inner meditation room. There are no thoughts about the outer world here, no day-to-day thoughts. This is a very sacred space, dedicated to reflection, to contemplating deeper ideas, bigger pictures, trying to understand. It's a simple space, uncluttered. And the moment I enter it, my mind, which is so often racing, utters a sigh of relief. This is a space where my mind can catch its breath, slow down, not having to run after actions or tasks or projects or timelines. The space is outside the pressure of time, timeless. And in this space, I am free to focus on the one thing I rarely focus on, the self. Not the image, not the roles, not the responsibilities, not the actions, not the possessions, but truly just the self. I, the thinker, I, the observer, I, the one that experiences and expresses, I, the traveler through time, the being, the life that animates this body, a body that's simply made up of elements. Hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon. I animate this body. Without me, it will fall down and cease to function. I am this tiny spark of life, consciousness. And in this sacred space inside, where I sit now, awareness of the body fades into the distance, and I become acutely aware of myself. This force of life that is me, able to think, feel, decide, remember, all these different functions that have nothing to do with the body. I go deep within this experience of myself, and it makes me feel oddly calm, as if there's this wonderful freedom, release, letting go of so many complications, so much baggage, and experiencing myself in this very simple way, this point of life that is me, I, the soul. As I stabilize here, it feels like this inner space in which I sit is filling with a very sweet silence, a serenity, wrapping around me like a cocoon. So calm, so peaceful, so nourishing and nurturing. This deep sense of peace that's wrapping around me, the soul, like a blanket. No worries, no tension. Just feeling more and more light. almost as if I'm in an elevator. This blanket of peace carrying me into such a sacred space, carrying me into what we might call God's operating room. Sweet silence, deep peace, in which all I experience is the qualities that reside in God's heart, the beauty of God's heart, where there are only pure healing feelings. So much of that deep peace, so much understanding, recognition, so much patience, acceptance, respect, appreciation, forgiveness, and of course, love. A deep valuing of the soul. God deeply values every human soul, as if every soul is more valuable than all the diamonds in the world put together. Deep love, more than I even have for myself. Unconditional love. There is not a speck of judgment in God's heart. This is a space where I, the soul, can heal. My own heart can become healthy. So it also radiates with those same pure feelings, that same pure love. Spending as much time as I can in God's operating room. That space that is silent but filled with pure love. Om Shanti. So I can see that our time is up and we will have to end or should have ended. Is there anything anyone wants to share?
My heartfelt thanks you with so much gratitude.
Thank you for joining. Thank you all for joining. Really touched. We do have one last thing to share, which will be sent to you as well. It is a blessing for each of you. So please take this into your heart, your true heart. The power of your pure heart is a creative force for healing, restoring dignity and self-worth in every being of the world. So the power of your pure heart is a creative force for healing, restoring dignity and self-worth in every being of the world. That makes you extremely valuable. It makes you assistant surgeons is what it makes you. So thank you so much again for joining. This recording will be uploaded if you want to refer to it again in any way, and we will send this blessing to you as well. But I deeply appreciate you joining and hope you're able to join for the next ones, which should be determined fairly soon. So until then, Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Take care.
Thank you. You're all a blessing.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Until next time, bye-bye.